Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Last week, Rabbi Berkman offered a sermon about how these parshiot that we're in the midst of, where we dwell at great length on the construction of the Mishkan, which was the tabernacle in the desert, is a metaphor for how, as a people, when we center our lives around construction, around building, we lead constructive lives. And the thing I wanted to consider this week in relationship to what he shared last week is the question of what exactly we're building. We know that we want to orient towards building, but what is it that we build? In today's Parsha, we go in very deep detail on a couple of items that are to be a part of our worship in the context of the temple. And we no longer have these sacred items, but again, I want to look at them for what we are told they are in the context of the Torah, and then think more broadly about what they mean and what they're saying about what our constructive religious lives are meant to be. The items that I want to draw your attention to are the ephod and the choshen. What is the ephod and what is the choshen? These are the breastplates and also the headpiece of the Kohen Gadol. And what I want you to notice about them is the detail that is put into the making of these items. And it could be said that actually each item in the Mishkan has this much detail in it. It is, and in particular, a ephod of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen. Shesh is the word for linen, and it's going to be worked into designs. The word for worked into designs is ma'aseh choshev, which seems to be a term saying a work of design. The breastplate is also a ma'aseh choshev, a work of a design. It's made in the style of the ephod. It's supposed to be gold, purple, crimson, and also a fine twisted shesh, linen. In the Talmud, the rabbis pick up on this word shesh, which you might hear also means 6. And they say, oh, this isn't just linen. Actually, this is twined 6-strand, hold on, I have to read this. 6 strands of gold thread twined together, each into 4 groupings of red, blue, purple, and linen to make a single thread. That's a 28-ply piece of thread that's going to be used just as a single part of this garment. So the level of labor, of detail, of intricacy is astonishing. And you might think that what we're creating is just simply something highly labor intensive and that the value of it resides in the labor in it. Holding this in our mind, I want to shift the frame a little bit and ask if any of you have watched the latest season of The Crown. I need a show of hands. Okay, so there are some, but enough that I have to frame this a little. So The Crown is just the story of the royal family of Great Britain, and it follows the life of Queen Elizabeth. Her memory be a blessing. And in one episode of this latest season, she asks a question about the monarchy. I think it's about 1995, and Tony Blair is the prime minister, and she's watching his very big sort of popular appeal to the people of Great Britain. And she's wondering about the monarchy and how the monarchy can be relevant in this modern world. And she asks Tony Blair as the prime minister to do an assessment of the monarchy and kind of like the excesses of the monarchy, and to come back to her with a suggestion of how the monarchy might modernize. And this, what I'm about to say, is very much about the monarchy, but I need you to be thinking along the lines also of how a religion as ancient as Judaism, with all of the fixtures, all of the Hebrew, all of the kind of inaccessible excesses that we have, even in this description of the temple, How is this similar potentially to how people relate to the monarchy as this sort of distant, inaccessible, very formal thing? So Tony Blair comes back to her and he says, I have a recipe for success for the monarchy. You need to do an audit of all of these crazy jobs that you guys have in your monarchy. Did you know that you have someone whose sole job it is to just watch the royal swans? Did you know that you have someone whose only job it is to just keep the porcelain for just your dinner dishes? And on and on and on. There's someone who's just in charge of the material that go into the linens, that go into the napkins. There's someone whose job it is to fold the napkins. And when you begin this episode, you're like, oh my God, yeah, he's really onto something. Like, that's crazy. That's so excessive. How in the world could you ever justify that level of luxury, of excess? This is completely anathema to the modern world that we're trying to create. So Queen Elizabeth goes about interviewing every single person who holds one of these jobs. And we, the viewer, get to watch her interview them. And what kind of unfolds is a story of each of these jobs being within a long lineage of tradition. Where this is most poignant is the moment where she is talking to the keeper of the Queen's swans, who has a document that is 5 centuries old. It's written in such old English that the Queen and her secretary cannot interpret it. They're trying to read from this scroll and they're kind of stumbling through it. And then this man whose job it is to be the keeper of the swans starts sort of mumbling to himself a perfect recitation of what is in the document because he has been taught it from his parents and from their parents and so on and so forth through the generations. After the Queen does this full audit of all of these offices, she comes back to Tony Blair and she's like, you know what? I actually understand for the first time what the true value of what we have is. It's not just about being luxury. It's not just about all of the labor that goes into these things, all of the value. It's the value that gets created when you pass something from generation. It's the value that's created when parents teach to children, when there are things that are so special and so specified that they take a lifetime to learn and to become expert in. Now, thinking about our religion and how arcane some of the things that we do can seem when we don't have access to them, when they're just a series of things that we recite, or maybe we don't even recite because we don't understand them and we don't know what's going on. I cannot help but see this scene in The Crown, which you should obviously watch. I can't help but watch it and think about our traditions and what happens when they become remote to us and we forget what it is that we are building together. And so when I read the Parsha again this week, Parshat Tetzaveh, and I heard this word, the Ma'aseh Choshev, these works of craftsmanship, I was also thinking about them being works of intention, works that we pass on from generation to generation. And whether we learn our tradition from our parents, from our teachers, from our tutors, wherever it comes from, we should understand that what we are building is something that has not centuries, but millennia of history. And the power of keeping it alive, the power of passing it on, might be hard to understand from the outside. But if we understand what we're doing, if we remember that what we're doing is constructing value through keeping something alive, I believe that we have something that will inspire us forever. And I feel so blessed to be watching The Crown and thinking, oh, I have that. I don't need a monarchy. I have Judaism. I have Torah. And so I hope for each of you, you can think about your own lives as this work of intention, that you can invest in your own practice, in your own relationship to your religion, from wherever you begin, as something that you truly want to pass on. And I hope that that will be something you consider from today and onward. Shabbat Shalom.